Stoneheart and then get into Ironhead. So I think we left off .46, or I want to pick up with 46. George and the gunner have been talking about Edie's heartstone, or seeing glass, because she's not there. And page 383, George is like, whoa, stop. I'm looking for the Stoneheart, and I've been looking for it with someone who you just remembered to tell me carry something called a Heartstone? You don't think that's important? It's like, no, well, I mean, they don't always call it the Heartstone. You know, sometimes they call it Memory Stone. And he says, besides, you said the glass just showed you the Stoneheart, and it's on Cannon Street. So it's not like the glass itself or the gun Edie was the Stoneheart, so no harm done, right? Okay. So, George, the gunner felt relief. George had made him feel stupid, like he'd missed something. It wasn't just because he'd missed something, it was because the boy had changed. Whatever he'd been going through was making him stand straighter and take charge. He wasn't a sniveler like he'd seemed when the gunner first saw him. He grinned. In other words, what's happened to George?
He's starting to grow up a bit.
Starting to grow up a bit, okay.
And becoming a leader.
Becoming a leader, okay, what else? What was he thinking at the beginning of the book?
Himself.
Be alone. Now?
He's taking care of others.
He's taking care of others. He's thinking of others, okay? So, the gunner walks around, he smells something, and the walker heads towards him. And we're going to skip a bit. Page 387. The gunner asks, 386, the gunner asks the walker, where's the girl? He says, where is she, walker? I've seen the bull's marks. So the walker says, skipping over to the next page, 387 in the middle, I don't need the girl. I need the boy. I need what he has. That is, the walker needs this. Why is that, stone servant? Okay, Stoneheart, stone servant. There are amends to be made. He's going to make his amends, and he's been trying to do that ever since he realized what he's done. Or what he is. See, the gunner doesn't know what George is, per se. He doesn't know that yet. You haven't told him? I ain't told him because I ain't sure what he is. All that matters is that you are out of order. That is, he's saying that to the walker. You're not taking what he has. He's going to make his amends. The walker, damn his amends. I don't give a Spanish fig for his amends. You think I like being a servant of the stone? I was a man of power. I had servants, not just flesh and blood. I want what was broken so I can make my amends. So the walker is in the same position essentially as George. Way I heard it, you have to serve the stone because you offended it out of greed and wanting more power and all. The boy crossed the stone without knowing what he was doing. So his ignorance trumps my intelligence? Compared with what you must have done to end up as cursed as you are, he's done nothing. Okay, who is the walker again? Pointed this out the other day.
John D.
He's John D. He's been around for 500 years. All right? If I make his sacrifice, some fraction of my curse is lifted, and maybe... And he pulls out a figurine that he'd taken from George's home. I have his image, too, made by a maker. The stone may swap one servant for another. Can't let you do that. You can't stop me. Gunner pulls out his revolver. You can't kill me, shoots him. But he doesn't shoot him. He shoots the little figurine. I can stop you putting his likeness on the stone. You'll not claim his soul that way. And the walker's just fit to be tied mad. And that's where we notice the bullets obliterate the end of the logo on the sweatshirt, turning John Deere into John D. Well, you should thank me then, Mr. D, when John D says, I like this shirt. At least it's spelled right now. Okay, now notice what's the difference between John D and the gunner?
The walker's like eternally serious, while the gunner is
Okay.
like,
What else? More obvious than that.
the gunner's good and walker's selfish.
Even more basic than that. The gunner's a statue. John D's a real person. Okay? The gunner's not a real person. Well, I mean, yeah, he walks and talks and acts like he's a real person, but he's a statue come to life. Okay? You're just a thing, 389. Made of metal, made by man. Remember that. A man made you. A man can unmake you. I am a man. You ain't a man. You ain't anything like a man anymore. You ain't been for a long, long time. Okay? So, the walker makes the gunner empty his revolver. And the ones in your gun, gunner, all the bullets, none hidden, swear it by the hand that made you. So he empties the cartridge, empties his pockets, swear it by the hand that made me, that's all of them. You know the penalty for breaking a maker's oath. Oath breaking's more your line. I know the deal. Break the oath and you wander forever. No child is worth that. Okay? The bull's roar. Skip that chapter. Chapter 48, the Minotaur. We go to the Labyrinth, which is the Barbican. And pick up with chapter 50, page 403. The gunner stops George. He looks at George's hand. And George, what? Maker's mark. The Glen Edie told me just before the Raven got hold of you. That mark means you got a choice, and I'd say you've made it. What choice? I haven't made a choice. Yeah, you have. You've chosen a lot, son. You're here. You could be at the stone putting your world to rights, but you're here. Right? George puts the dragon's head on the stone. His problems are gone. But you're here. George nods. And the gunner points out what he's getting at. Standing taller you are. Taller and straighter than I first saw you. You ain't apologizing for yourself. You're fighting. In other words, George isn't what anymore? He's not a loser. He's not hunched over, physically hunched over, shoulders rounded forward, and hiding. Okay? He's standing like what? The gunner notices. A man. A soldier. Okay? I'm just trying to stay alive. No, you're not. If that's what you were doing, you'd be at the stone. You're trying to help her. You come a long way, mate, not just smiles. You know what? You know why you're fighting and not just sniveling? Not because of this mark. You're fighting because you got something to fight for. The mark is what got you in trouble. It's also what might help you out of it. Mark says you're a maker. I'm not a maker. I don't make anything. But he notices in his pocket, he's got the plasticine blob still, like Play-Doh. You may not know what you are, but I'll tell you what, the taints know it. And after I seen you with that dragon at Temple Bar, I know it. It's in your blood. You done well, son. You look to be made of pretty dodgy stuff at first. He says, but it's not the clay, it's what you make of it. Okay? So, the bull and the bullet, what happens? 410, 411. The gunner palmed a bullet. But you haven't got it. Yeah, I have. But you swore. Too clever by half, the walker. You want to fool a bloke who thinks he's made of brains? Try something simple. Kept my thumb over one chamber, but you broke your oath. My choice. Notice that. My choice. Girl didn't sign up for this. Can't let it happen. But you'll don't want to hear it. What's his choice? Cursed forever?
Or let Edie die.
Or let Edie die. And he says what? She didn't sign up for this. It's not her fault she was born this way. Okay? George couldn't believe his eyes. The gunner shoots and what?
Misses.
He's a gunner. He's not supposed to miss. He hasn't missed any other shots. George, what happened? Missed. You're the gunner. You don't miss. He goes, sorry. Told you, don't believe everything people say to you. Okay. So George then asks the gunner, okay, so you have another one, right? You got more bullets? Gunner's like, no, I'm all out. What are you going to do? How are you going to rescue her? Dunno. Page 413. Maybe another bullet I could blow into him somehow, but he's going to rip me open from stem to stern. You too. You know what minotaurs do to little girls? You don't really want to. Best not think about it. They're messy eaters. George, so what can we do? Gunner, go down fighting. In other words, Edie's still screwed, no matter what, because you and I are going to die. George didn't want to go down, fighting or no fighting. Gunner's attitude was tough and brave, but annoying. So George puts his hand in his pocket, pulls out that plasticine blob. Give me the shell. What? Give it. I'm going to make a bullet. I mean, if I'm a maker, George is thinking, stuff the plasticine in. If I'm this maker, I'll make a bullet. Yeah, but you're made of bronze. You're soft enough to move. There was new metal in George's voice, and the gunner found he was swiveling both eyes forward, as he'd been told, as he'd been ordered. You're the boss, but you better hurry up. So, we see Edie. George grabbed the sea glass out of his pocket, puts it in Edie's limp hands. She murmurs. Edie sees George. Good George, make it work. 417. As he worked, he tried not to hear the grunting and clashing going on. That is, the Minotaur and the gunner fighting. He thought of bullets. He thought of what they can do. He thought of what he'd seen them do. Why is he thinking of bullets and what they can do and what he'd seen them do?
Because that's the key to making the bullet.
He has to put the purpose into the bullet. Okay? He saw them pulverizing the salamanders at the gunner's memorial. In other words, he's putting in to this bullet, blow the Minotaur to smithereens. He remembered the bullets in the gunner's hands as he calmly reloaded. He imagined the force that a bullet carries. As he thought of what a bullet was, of what he'd seen, of how they looked, he found his hands loosening and doing what? Working by themselves, almost. And he notices the scar stops hurting. Okay? George goes across to the gunner. Just as the Minotaur hits the gunner, gets a horn through his gut. The Minotaur jerked its head, bottom of 418, twisting the horn in the wound with the ferocity of a terrier shaking a rat, pushing the gunner back to the railing high above the street below. The gunner took the railing in the small of his back as he raised his hands to climb down on the bull's neck. Okay? He feels a black taste in his mouth, felt it tingle spikily in his nose, found he was running forward, cocking the gun with both thumbs, aiming right at the thick bone, and the gunner tells him, aye. George looks at the Minotaur looks at him. Pow! But just before the gun fires, there's a crack, and the Minotaur and the gunner are gone. Skip a bit. Page 425, Death from Above. George gags, lofted in the air. He sees Edie being sniffed at. And as the tongue lolled out and swirled over her hair and head, he saw the plea in her eyes and the way she flinched. And then he saw, too, how the flinching pleased the Minotaur and saw its strange mouth twist. It wasn't the beast's leer so much as the look in the flinching shudder in Edie's eye that made his hand pull out of the jacket with the revolver in it, and pew, he found the hot eyeball rolling up to meet his over the gun sight, and the bull began to roar. And not for a moment did he think the bullet he'd made wouldn't work, only that he might spoil it by missing. And he shoots. He fells the retort of the gun. Bullseye, says the gunner. Bloody brilliant. Now tell me you ain't got a maker's hands. Just in the nick of time. Okay? So, they get ready to go. And the gunner says, we go together. Page 427. We've come this far together and we end this together. But you're hurt. I know, my luck turned. Because you... Edie doesn't know what the gunner did. What's the gunner thinking?
Just don't let her know about it.
Well, okay, that and what else? Because Edie's like, but you got to get back to your plinth. And the gunner's thinking, that's not going to matter. Okay? 53, Black Tower. So they go on, skip 53, go to 54. And Edie says something not good's going to happen. 432. You don't see the future, the gunner says. Bad stuff happens all the time. She says it's not that. She looks at George. What did he break? George tells her. 432. Edie's like, what? You mean I didn't ask him to? Sorry, it's my bloody temper. It's always my temper. If I'd kept it, what? Nothing. George's hand reached for her shoulder. She shrugged off. He didn't, however, let go. Edie, what? If I'd known how to control my temper, I don't think I'd be where I am now. I wouldn't be alone. I'd have a family. She fired out a short laugh. I'd have a dad anyway of sorts, if I'd controlled myself. Well, she and George are kind of two peas in a pod, George is thinking. So they get to the London Stone. Page 435. They're walking with the walker, and Edie, the walker says, take it out, boy, hand it over. Edie felt a tug between her and the walker. He was so busy watching George pull broken carving out of his pocket, he'd stopped looking at her. She'd felt the tug before, but it was usually when something especially nasty was trying to make her touch things with deep sadness. She never went into churchyards, for example. But no human had ever exerted such a tug, and then she saw what it must be, the stone with the hole in it, the one on the choker around the walker's neck. Okay. She goes for his throat, page 437. Her left hand grabbed the stone, her left hand grabbed the walker's ear, clamped tight. She felt the metal of his earring pressed painfully into her hand, but she kept holding on like a terror, like she's going to rip it. Okay. Go on to 56. George asks, because the gunner has the walker now, what happens when I put the head on the stone? You get what you want. It's over, done. What does that mean? Edie, come on, hurry up. Tell him, the walker says. What happens? It ends. You make your amends. You return to your vision of safe, happy London. Sans spit, sans Tate, sans anything strange. But I'll remember it, right? No, George. You won't remember any of this. You won't remember Edie. What will happen to Edie? Nothing. She'll go on. Okay. The walker says, this isn't the stone heart, it's the London stone. Yes, make your little amends. So if I do this, George says, 442, you'll still be here and I'll be in a London that doesn't have any of this? I'll be fine. Well, I mean, Edie's been fine for however old she is. She widens a smile, her eyes seem to shine. George, you're not scared of anything. Go on, I'll be fine. What if the Sphinxes gave me an answer that has two meanings? I mean, that would be like them, right? Come on, George. Do it. George says, wait. Bottom of 443. The stone heart and the stone at the heart of London. What if they are two different things? Instead of two ways of describing the same stone. What if this London stone is the stone at the heart of London? But the stone heart is something else entirely. Like what? I don't know. It could be anything, any place. Come on, George. No. What if there's more to this than me just making good what I broke and going home to extra maths and a bunch of kids who don't like me anymore than I like them? Look, Edie. And he shows her. Shows her his hand. I made a bullet and it worked. What if There's no more time for what if, George. This is when you do what you do, and goodbye, yeah? No good both of us being stuck here. And at least one of us can be free. Okay? She says, one lives, one dies, essentially. George, no, I'm not leaving you alone. I'm not forgetting any of this. You could be free, but you'd be stuck. I got on fine. No, you didn't. Okay? And she hits him. George, told you never to hit me again. Told you not to tell me what to do. Gunner says, it's okay. You'll be all right. Oh, God. Walker. Glints are never all right. They almost all come to bad ends. Tell her the truth. George, excuse me, miss? She turns, I'm sorry, I don't know where I am. And then he grins. Says, no, don't think I will. So, the gunner and Walker disappear. And 4:49, George says we're going to have to rescue the gunner. And Edie says, I've seen him before, the Walker. When? About 100 years before today. When? When I glinted in the Thames. She says, he was drowning someone. It was horrible. It was me. George, well, we can't let that happen. So we pick up, and Fletcher gives us a little brief, overview of what's been going on so far. And where do the Walker and the gunner go?
Way underground. Right.
Is it way underground?
Or just...
is it really deep underground? No, but it's an underground cistern, okay, that's been blocked up at one end. It's through it a river runs, or an underground stream. There are several of these in London. And when you walk around on top of London proper, you'll go by places that tell you that these were here. Like, I think the one that's mentioned is Walbrook. Well, this is the brook by the London Wall. Okay? It's still there today. Only thing is, it's underground. It's like a sewer system. Okay? The only river that runs through London now is the Thames. So, the gunner looks at the Walker where they are in the darkness, and there's just a little bit of light. And what does he see? He sees piles of heartstones. What are the heartstones made out of?
Sea glass.
What's sea glass? It's not actually glass that comes up from the bottom of the ocean.
Is it like sands that spin pressure?
Nope. Bottles, real bottles, not plastic, that get broken, and it's the bottoms. Worn smooth. So there's no sharp edges, but as with bottles, you get what? Different colors, different levels of opaqueness and such. Okay? The bottle that became Edie Seaglass is going to come up in book 3. Okay? So, we go back to George and Edie in chapter 2, Sticks and Stones. And she asks him, I'm going to skip a bit, page 14. You ever think you're cursed, George? Well, that's a natural question. I think a lot of people probably think that, bad things just happen over and over and over again. Cursed, jinxed, bad luck, whatever. George, you think you're cursed? She goes, not like by a witch, But, like you done something bad once so that bad stuff happens to you? Like you attract it? George, you mean, I don't know, like break a head off a statue and end up being chased through London? She goes, no, not like that either. I mean your whole life. Like something bigger, something that made you break the statue in the first place, something that screwed up your luck. George, ooh, that's a little close to home. shouting something vile at his dad. He saw the answering tears start in his father's eyes. He saw the door he'd slammed on his father. And he saw that same door opening later that night. It's not even like his dad went off and a couple days later the cop comes and says, by the way, Mrs. Chapman, your husband is dead. Ex-husband. Revealing the policeman and woman who had come to tell his mother there had been a car accident. His father would never walk through that door, any door, ever again. No. George lies. Been that peachy and perfect, huh? George, he's not dead. I mean, it's not just because he saved us we owe him. George, we do owe him. It's more than that. The gunner made me feel safe. Me too. Next page. Rain starts, the gargoyles up on the roof. George asks, do you remember when you were a kid and it all seemed safe because your dad was there? Not really. We're going to find out Edie's whole background, book 3. Not really. George, well, I do. Before he died, before I messed it all up between him and me. I said stuff. Everybody says stuff. Yeah, but not everybody's dad dies before you can kind of unsay it. Okay? She says, so that's the terrible thing that you think you're cursed for? You said something nasty? That's nothing. Peanuts. George doesn't like this. When you expose a private part of yourself, you don't really want people to snort in derision. He pulled his dignity back around and he says, oh, so I suppose you've got some deeper, dark secret? Yeah. What is it? I killed him. Okay, that's,
Slightly worse.
Exponential level, yeah. Something was wrong. The raven felt it in its bones. Well, let's leave the raven. And let's skip a bit. Death of Glints. The Walker and Gunner talk about the Glints that the Walker has killed and the stones he has taken from them. And he leaves the Gunner behind. I'm going to skip a bunch. Chapter 9. The Black Friar's out. Looking. And he comes up to the queen. This is a statue of Boadicea, I believe. Where is this? Yeah. And page 50, she says, priest bow to kings. He says, not good priests, dear lady, not ones I should value at any rate. And they talk about George and Edie. They talk about the gunner. Let's skip a bunch. We've got the tallyman. Yeah, I skipped a whole bunch in here. So pick up with George meets in, what chapter is that? Chapter 17, Ariel. He's fallen and he's been captured by this flying spirit. Remember, little tragedy kind of turns on him. And I want to pick up in this chapter 17 on, make sure there's not anything else there. Yeah. Pick up on 107. They get to the top of the building that she's on, which is essentially the London City Hall. It's called, its nickname, is the Jerkin, and it's a funny shaped building in London. It kind of looks like this. Okay. You go to London and hear people talk, and they talk, I mean, it's just got one penis joke after another associated with it. It's made out of glass. It's really ugly in terms of what it is surrounded by. And Ariel says, why do you want to go down so soon? Or you want to go down soon? But you can see everything from here. Page 107. George, I know, except I can't see Edie and I can't see the gunner. And frankly, I'm fed up with this all. I've got friends in trouble, they need help, and I need help to help them because they're my responsibility. All that happens is I seem to be, being carried farther and farther away from any place I might find him. So please, Ariel, I have to do what has to be done. Okay? And she says, well, that's my job, to help do what has to be done. That's why I came for you. He doesn't know what she means. Sorry. I told you what I was, spirit of the air, minister of fate. She tugs his ankle, but you don't get the easy way, do you, boy? You get the hard way. Remember the Black Friar telling George there's two ways? You could do the easy way, or you could do the hard way. Because he chose not to put the dragon's head on the stone heart, or the London stone, if that is the stone heart, then he would go the hard way. Okay? So, the Minotaur is back and out looking for them.
The Icarus.
Yeah. What did I say?
Minotaur.
Yeah, sorry. And we see the gunner, notice, not fully dead, but he's lying there in the cistern, and what does he think? Well, there's water here, and yet it's not full to the top, which kind of indicates there's got to be somewhere for that water to get out. So he goes and he starts to dig. Page 116. Edie's talking with the Black Friar. And he says, he didn't put the head on the stone? Yeah. Because you ran out of time, right? That's why he didn't do it? You surprised me. Indeed you do. I saw the mark he bore. I sensed the power within. Well, devil me kidneys. I'd have wagered on him finding the stone heart. He didn't run out of time. He found the stone heart. It was the London stone. He worked it out. He followed the map of words you gave him. He did other stuff too. Been amazing. Maybe she should tell George that next time she sees him. He just chose not to put the dragon's head on the stone. He chose the hard way. And I want to know if that's why he disappeared. He chose the hard way? He actually chose it. Why would he do that? And he looks at little tragedy. Okay? Okay? So she tells, page 118, the friar, I've got to find George and we have to help the gunner. Why is that? Because it's the right thing to do. Only problem is, what do they know has happened or think or believe, whatever, has happened to the gunner? They don't know. They know the walker took him away somewhere. And when she heard herself say that, she realized that was exactly why for her it had to be done. Take a life, save a life. She's thinking, what? Killed my father, save the gunner. No, the gunner's not really alive. Okay? Little friar says he doesn't have anything to hide. Excuse me, Edie does. Top of 120. The friar's thinking about glints. A glint? Nothing to hide? Well, a glint is nothing but a veritable warehouse stuffed to the gunwales with hidden things. The hidden and the hiding are two sides of the same coin, as you know in the core of your young being, whether you acknowledge it or no. A glint absorbs the hidden in the world and must hide to survive in that world. In other words, if Edie wanted to, she could know everything about what's going on. Okay? So, page 123, chapter 21, the last night. George hears the bell tolling. Ariel lands in front of him, and George asks, page 124, because she points up, side of a big renovated warehouse, something red and boxy high on the wall above them. George couldn't really tell, other than it's a bell. Must have been a fire bell at one time. He says, "Why are we here?" And she quotes John Donne, 17th century poet and preacher. "Sin not to know for whom the bell tolls, boy, it tolls for thee." George, okay. Why is it tolling for me? Okay, bell tolling for somebody is indicating their death is imminent. Or they've already died. It's British custom. Used to be British custom. If somebody, you're out in a village out, away from London, somebody died, the village church bell would ring. If it were a man who died, it would ring 9 times, then a pause, and then it would ring each time for the number of years the man lived. So if it rang 9 times, and then there was a pause, and then it rang 19 times, you knew a 19-year-old man in the village had died. And usually, if it's small enough village, that would tell you who it was. Okay? So, it tolls for you, George. He's thinking, okay, it's a summoning bell. It's summoning you to meet the last night. Why? George asks. Why is it summoning me? You chose the hard way. That starts here. Who's the last knight? George asks. What's he thinking? Knights. Arthur? Lancelot? Is this going to be some badass knight? Okay. He's the last knight of the Knichten Guild, she says, top of 126. The what? She tells him. And she points at the plaque. King Edgar granted this derelict land to 13 knights on condition that they each perform 3 duels. One on land, one below land, one on water. These feats having been achieved, the king gave the knights or Knichten Guild certain rights. And a knight comes up, will you stand? George, oh, yes, hello. Will you stand? George looks down at himself. I am standing. Notice he doesn't understand. Will you stand means, will you battle? And then will you stand? Yes, I'll stand. I am standing. I do stand. Notice he goes through the verb tenses. As you see, you've asked me that 3 times already. What has the knight just done? He's issued the challenge. The challenge has to be issued 3 times. Will you duel? Will you duel? Will you duel? It has to be responded to in the affirmative 3 times. Okay? And you've accepted 3 times. George, okay, well, thank you. Clang. It was the sound of a great host shouting and hitting their shields with swords or lances, and in a flash of something like lightning or a sheet of flame, George saw the guild gathered around him in a living frame, like ghostly projections. In other words, George is now in the middle of essentially a circle. And he's aware, he's staring at Ariel. Ariel, she says he meant good knight, not the other. It's chivalry. George, I didn't accept any bloody challenges. Yes, you did, boy. You agreed to stand. So what do I have to do? Stand and fight. 3 duels. 3 trials of strength, none to be fought on the same ground as any other. You must fight on the earth, under the earth, and on the water. Okay? You right? I mean, did you read the plaque? Why must I fight? Because you chose the hard way. George is like, yeah, but I didn't agree to all the small print, You chose to remain. Now you must prove you're worthy. And if I don't, then you won't remain here or in any London. She pushes up his sleeve and taps the metal flaw twining out from the maker's mark. Because what has happened now with the scar? 3 lines have started moving up his arm from it. Each of these flaws, she says, page 131, will start to move toward your heart when you begin a duel. They do this to make you finish each contest, for if you run away, the flaw will continue up your arm and pierce your heart. So don't run away. You must stand and prove yourself. Only in that way will you show what you are made of. These are like the elements of his being. Okay? George, I can't fight. I don't have a weapon. Then pray that your wits are sharper than his lance, boy. Because charge. Okay? George steps sideways, hoping to run into the low brick colonnades. Something hard like the flat of a sword smacked his head, made it ring. We hear the word coward. Something else bats into his face, sends him sprawling back into the center. And we're told being hit in the nose hurts a lot, but it also does what? Spikes that adrenaline, man. George got very angry very quickly. He remembered the gunner just after he'd first saved George, way back at the beginning. And the gunner said, "You're angry? Sometimes that gets things done." This isn't one of those times. George, okay, fine. And he rolls up his sleeves and puts his legs apart. Why? Puts his legs apart, balance, rolls up his sleeves, time to get to business. Do your worst. He asked, anyone going to lend me a shield? Nobody does. Yeah, to hell with you. George, I don't know what this means, but I'm a maker. You might not want me to get my hands on you. The knight stops. Okay, what does that mean? Or what does George mean by that? If he's a maker, what else can he do? He can change what the knight is, because the knight is a made thing. What else can he do? He can unmake the knight. The knight stops. Show me. George shows it. You carry the mark. George, yes, I do. The mark of the Iron Hand. George is like, okay, yeah, that's right. Me, Iron Hand. No, an Iron Hand. There have been many. You have the mark that says you may be one. Only time, your ordeals, and how you face them will tell. But that's a good thing, right? Notice he's talking to his opponent here. It is. So you're good, and I'm good, and I'm an Iron Hand, or maybe an Iron Hand, so we're both good, right? So we're all good. We can go off and, He saw the knight slowly nod his great helmet. It does make a difference. It means you're a worthy adversary. In other words, my glory will be the greater if I kill you or defeat you. So we leave George there, getting ready to be skewered, and we go back to the Walker and the Raven. We see Edie at the Blackfriars. And the friar tells Edie, 140, you think you're seeing reflections of yourself again and again, because where is she standing? She's gone towards the alcove where Little Tragedy is. She's like up here somewhere. And on this post are mirrors, which if you've ever done anything like that, going to, fun house kind of thing, what happens? It's like infinity. It just keeps going back. You think you're seeing reflections of yourself again and again. Page 140, the Blackfriar says. But you're not. You're seeing moments in time. In other words, these aren't place mirrors. These are time mirrors. Even a single reflection in a mirror is never yourself in the present. Why? Because it takes a thin slice of a microsecond for the light carrying the image to bounce off the mirror and back to your eye. Okay, now that's literally true if you think about it. Everything you're seeing slightly, ever so slightly, out of what it was doing in the present when the light bounced off to enter your eye. That's how we see. Okay? We never see ourselves as we are, only as we were. Okay? So, She and the Blackfriar talk, and he says, you don't, page 142, you don't seem impressed by this? Not really. I got enough trouble coping with this particular present. I don't need more. You don't need more? She says, no, really. I can't really do the past layers of London thing. I mean, yeah, I get what you're saying, but it's crap. It's crap? You think different realities, layered past, are a bit of crap? She goes, yeah, no offense and all, but what? That's all she needs. She knows all about the past. Okay? She says all that magic mushroom mumbo jumbo they think makes sense of what's going on in their messed up heads, stuff like all the molecules in their fingernails. He says, what it sounds like to your young ears is something I have no control over, Glenn. What it is, I can show you. Okay? They go into the mirrors. So, the dolorous stroke, which in King Arthur stories is what? When Arthur gets killed. So the knight says to George, you must fight me, 146-47. George, I am fighting. I don't have a weapon. Twinge of pain in the scar made him look down at his hand. He remembered how it had cut through the tentacled arm of the earth creature that had grabbed him in the underpass. He remembered how the Temple Bar dragon had looked at his hand in a kind of wonder. He remembered making the bullet that had killed the Minotaur. He remembered the gunner's look of awe as he told him he was a maker. And then he looked down at the lance that was tapping him on the leg. The knight was cajoling him to fight as if he were a toddler, and he thought of the power in his hands. And what does he do? He moves. His hand flashed down, grabbed the lance about 1 foot 6 inches from the tip. He knew what he would do, and he tried to focus his mind in order to do it. He was going to snap the lance off. Well, the very tip of the lance, the last 6 inches, is probably only maybe 1 inch thick. But you go a foot up from that, and you're probably talking close to 3 inches thick. And a 12-year-old kid's not going to be able to snap a 3-inch chunk of wood. This would be a good thing on many levels. Not the least because he was pretty sure the sculptor who made the knight had decided not to equip him with a sword. George is thinking, he's a sculptor, okay, so if I break the lance off, I've got something. All he has now is a broken lance. Keep in mind, though, a lance is pretty big. The knight could use it as a club and beat him to death with it. So, he does put his hand around it. He does put everything into it. And what does the knight do? Jerks him back. Okay? And when the knight, 149, pricked his horse forward and lowered his lance, George did the other thing the knight hoped. George did the one other thing he hoped the knight wasn't expecting. He ran toward him. Didn't plan it, but it came into his mind thinking of an old time with his dad. The trick is to zig when they expect you to zag, playing rugby. Right? He keeps running, dodging. Ariel says, 151, you can't refuse the duel. The gate's closed. George, fine, let go of my arm and I'll climb over. I cannot do that. Page 152. Ariel says, why? Because I'm a minister of fate. No one, absolutely no one, cheats fate, boy. She spat that last boy as if she were getting something really disgusting out of her mouth. Clang, bell tolls, and suddenly the gargoyle shows up. Now, where does the gargoyle show up from? It had been watching George and Edie earlier, and we're told, bottom of 153, the gargoyle, which he had named Spout, because he pulled the spout out, looks down at him and goes, "Gah!" He's carrying George. What he saw instead was the knight and the horse and the lance thrust through the gate up to the hilt. He also saw that the figure writhing on the end of the weapon was the source of the screaming, not him. Her golden shape was the last thing George saw before his eyes fluttered. Spout comes and rescues George, but what happens? Ariel gets skewered by the knight. Okay? So now what is George going to have to make sure? How do I put this? What must George now ensure happens to Ariel?
Gets back to her plinth.
She's got to get back on the top, of the plinth. Okay? Let's skip a bit more. I'm going to skip the chapter Black Moon and Black Mirror, Hunter's Moon. And go to chapter 28, ENGL. Spout takes him to where he normally is. I think on St. Pancras. And pick up with 181. George is there with Spout, and what happens? Other gargoyles come. Okay? He's still with Spout, 181. He knew without having to look at the shape lopped out of gargoyle's wing that he's holding the broken piece. That is, they go to the place and there's broken piece of Spout and there's Spout. George looks at the two. His hands felt the identical rough texture. His fingers knew that he was feeling the negative shape of the one he'd felt on Spout's wing. He knew it was the same rock. He knew it would fit the space exactly. And George kind of goes, oh, light bulb goes off. I'm a maker. What does that also mean? I'm a fixer. Spout squats in front of him, angles the broken wing towards George. George, you want me to fix you? Yep. Okay, George, I can't. It's not a matter of putting it back. It's got to be fixed. What does George not realize about his hands? It's complicated, 182, George says. I mean, it's got to be glued or mortared or something. I don't have any mortar with me. He doesn't know what his hands will do with stone. He's going to try in a moment. What does he discover? If I were George, what could my hands do to this podium? What could my fingers do?
Make it into it.
Go right through it. Because this would become soft in my hands, in my touch. The stone does the same thing. It's like the stone becomes liquid or molten. It's just not hot. So he can bend it, push it, pull it. He squeezes the wing apologetically, and as he does so, he feels the stone become hot. Eigengang. The heat became fiercer. And as he moved his hand along the seam between the two pieces of stone, it became hard to work out where the heat was coming from. He realized it's not coming from the stone, it's coming from his hand. He didn't know afterward why his eyes had closed, but he found he had blanked out the world, just focused on what he could feel. Why? Because probably looking at it told his mind, you can't do this, George. But he feels the stone. He felt the tiny crackle and pop occurring within the crack, as split granules of stone found their sundered neighbors and knitted back together under the heat coming from his hand. And when he's finished, he's pooped. I mean, just tired. And he's wet and sweaty. Okay? And that's when he realizes, they're about to be attacked. Okay? So, queen takes knight. Queen goes to rescue Ariel. We're going to skip some. Chapter 30. How far are we? Yeah. We'll get about half of the way through and then we'll stop. 3 challenges and a betrayal. Chapter 31. Edie and the friar go back to, or Edie goes back to Blackfriars, and she asks him, page 198, what exactly is the hard way? Is it why he just vanished off the face of the earth? Maybe. Tell me. A little more, please. 199. He told her that George must stand and fight the 3 duels, and that they all had to be fought above or below ground, in the air, or in or on the water. So one has got to be on ground, one has got to be above ground, and one either has to be in or on water. All 3 duels are actually going to be fought in the next book. He explained that this was so because the challenge of 3 contests was one of London's forgotten rituals. But that just because it had been forgotten didn't mean it didn't underpin the city in an important way. He says, after all, my dear, who remembers the keystone that was laid beneath the cathedral or the church? But they are there, and though forgotten, it should be remembered the whole edifice would tumble without them. Or what's sometimes just called the cornerstone. Okay? She says, it's tradition, you mean? He says, no, it's not tradition. Tradition is like giving votes to the most obscure class of people, namely your ancestors. No, tradition is the democracy of the dead. George has to do this, why? To earn his place in the fabric. George has to do these 3 duels to earn his place. Think of the tapestry. Okay? What if he doesn't? Well, then he's a goner. He has to. To refuse a contest is a failure. To fail is to become a stone servant. Did John Dee fail? And that's why he's a servant? Did the clocker fail? So that's bad. Yeah. But he doesn't know this, Edie says. If he doesn't know the hard way is the way of 3 duels, he might refuse a challenge. He might. I would. I'd run away. Then you better find him. How can I find him? Look. London's a huge city. It's like searching for a needle in a haystack. Then don't waste time. Be on your way. First step in finding a needle in a haystack is to start. In other words, do what? Walk out those doors. Will you help? I thought I did. Help me find George? Why would I help? Because you're a spit. Okay, you're not a taint. In other words, okay, maybe you're not really a spit. Absence of hostility does not mean presence of benevolence, my child. It can also mean indifference. And I, uncharitable and uncharacteristic as it may be to admit, find that I am sublimely and ineffably indifferent. In other words, I don't care what happens to the kid. No proverbial skin off my nose. Why? And the Black Friar looks over at little tragedy. Yes, why? Why? I don't know why you've gone all like this. Why you won't help. Tragedy comes out. Little Tragedy scuttled out of the shadows and nimble-fingered his way into the pockets. In an instant, he pulled out the broken dragon's head, like a conjurer producing a rabbit, eyes wide. Look at that, little George's dragon. Blimey. The friar got what he wanted. And he says, I should blind you. Why? Because it appears that the boy did not trust me, and neither do you. And trust, midlady, is a 2-way street. That street is now closed. I cannot abide a liar. What did she and George tell him?
That they left the dragon.
That they didn't have the dragon head. He glared at her with an intensity she found hard not to blink at. Page 202. She wanted him to turn back into the friar who had shielded her from certain death and then run her to safety through the blitz. But that friar's gone. Too late. I'm sorry. I should have thanked you. But what does the friar do? In the very next second, he protects her from what? Tap at the window, stop for conversation. They see 3 figures. Keep her out of sight until I tell you. Okay? Hold on a second. Yeah, well. Let's stop there. We'll finish the rest of this on, what's today, Tuesday? On Tuesday, because Thursday's Thanksgiving. Please come on Tuesday. I'm going to do the course evaluations then. And expect a quiz over this book.